The thing that used to frustrate me, and still does to a certain extent, businesses are highly regulated globally, particularly businesses that are nomadic, as I'd call them, multi-jurisdictions. But when businesses came here and their general manager or MD sometimes just left those standards at home, and I couldn't understand it.
Right, so today's guest, John Martin St. Valery, OBE. This guy has been in Dubai for 30 years now, and he saw an opportunity many years ago to help companies establish themselves here in the UAE. In fact, he was a pioneer of doing exactly that.
Partnerships are what it's all about. Humility goes a long way. We don't always get it right. You have an enforced partnership, then embrace that partnership and actually don't just have it as something you have to do. People used to say, oh, it's like a tax really, isn't it, paying that amount? No, we're here to engage with the local Emirati community, and so much value can be added by working collaboratively.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Allsopp Allsopp Mortgage Brokers, the leaders in Dubai real estate. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a seasoned investor, or looking to refinance, Allsopp Allsopp's dedicated mortgage team will expertly guide you every step of the way, ensuring a seamless and stress-free journey. Now, with over 16 years of experience, they offer exclusive access to the UAE's best rates, personalized advice, and tailored financing solutions that perfectly suit your needs, leaving you free to focus on finding your dream home. And that's what we want. Experience the difference with Allsopp Allsopp, your trusted partner in securing the perfect mortgage solution.
John Martin St. Valery, OBE.
Yeah, don't forget that, Biff.
What does it sound like when someone says OBE to you? I mean, you must be very proud that you've achieved an OBE, but do you get a little bit embarrassed sometimes when it's announced?
Yeah, maybe if it's sort of overly sort of enunciated like you just did, then I'm feeling very awkward. No, not really. I'm very proud of it, obviously, and it's a great thing to be bestowed.
So when you introduce yourself at maybe a networking event or a dinner or whatnot, do you say, "Hi, my name's John Martin St. Valery, OBE"?
I was at an event last Christmas actually, and I was delighted because they'd actually put on the name tag Sir John Martin St. Valery OBE. I thought it was something I hadn't, heard of.
It was coming. You were waiting for the call from the palace.
Yeah. No. I mean, it is a wonderful recognition. And I think what I like is anything in life that begs a question. And so people, firstly, what is it? Or what is it for? And it's a reason to have another sort of interesting conversation. Well, interesting, I hope.
Okay, so let's start there. What did you get an OBE for?
Well, it was great, actually. I think the citation is for services to British business in the UAE. And that was as a result of sort of many years of pro bono work with the British Business Group, as it was for Dubai and Northern Emirates, now the British Chamber of Commerce, Dubai. And the reason I'd been so involved with that organisation right from the start was when I first got here in the late 90s, same time as you, Spencer, I had no network, either personal or business. I'd been over here a couple of times and we'd been on holiday with the very young kids, but I had no network. And someone said to me in those very early days, "Oh, John, you should join the BBG." And I said, "Well, what's this? What is this BBG you speak of?" And British Business Group, group of like-minded individuals that are either senior within British business here in Dubai or the Northern Emirates, specifically in the UAE, or perhaps owner-managers who are British. So I joined this network, little offices, shared offices within the grounds of the British Embassy here, down on the creek. So that was quite nice, going to the British Embassy, on British soil and all that sort of stuff. But it's through that organisation I met the lawyer I wanted to deal with, the recruiter, the accountant, so on and so forth. So it gave me so much in the early days of arriving here to set up a business for a foreign company, a British company, and not having a network. So I always felt there was something there to give back. And fast forwarding from 2017 to 2022, actually after I'd sold my business but was still engaged with them, I was voted in as chair of the group. And that's when we started this transition phase to a part of the global British Chambers of Commerce.
Wow. And then, so what happens? You've had this long history of trying to help businesses here, and you boot yourself a network. Do you get a letter? Do you get an email? How does it work? Does the Buckingham Palace say, "Hear ye, hear ye"? I mean, everyone will want to know how this works.
Every time the phone rings,
Did you have a special phone in you? A red or so?
the bat phone. No, but in all seriousness, you never really sort of think about that sort of thing, and we sort of rather fast forwarded the 28 odd years, but it was in end of 2022. It must have been 22, 23. Yes, that I was chair of the British Business Group and just coming to the end of my period, and I got a call from the Consul General here and Trade Commissioner for the Middle East, who'd sort of become a friend over the years. And Simon called me and said, "John, are you coming into the BBG office today?" And the office being on the embassy grounds. And it was a Sunday. And I said, "Well, no, I wasn't really planning to." And this was when it was Friday, Saturday weekend. I think it's just before it changed. And he said, "Oh, it would be good if you did come in, actually." So then, of course, it was imposter syndrome. What have I done? Being called into the headmaster. I better go in. I said, "I'll be in around 3:00 if that suits you." So got to the embassy, went through security and everything, and his lovely PA, Grace, came to meet me and said, "Simon would like to see you at the residence, actually." And I thought, "Oh, right, God." Got in the buggy, went up to the residence, and I was in fairly casual, being a day off for me, actually. And Simon was there looking quite formal, more formal than I'd sort of expected. I thought it was just a chat, maybe about the forthcoming British Business Group Christmas ball that was coming up. And there might have been something about security we needed to discuss, or that sort of thing. That's what I was expecting. He said, "Well, come into the study. Would you like a cup of tea?" And we had a bit of small talk. And eventually I just said, "Simon, what do you want? What's on your mind?" And he said, "Well, no, don't worry, John. Don't worry." And he knew that he was on the wind up by this stage, I think. He said, "It's about you personally." I said, "Oh, right. Oh dear. Great. Okay. Well, tell me, what is it?" And he just went behind him and got this brown envelope off the shelf on Her Majesty's service, as it was at the time. He said, "There's a letter in there for you." And it was a letter signed by Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth, asking me if I would accept the honour of becoming an officer of the Order of the British Empire. That's making the hairs on my neck stand up. It was such a shock, genuinely. And Simon said, "Well, I haven't seen you speechless before. I take it you will accept." Oh, I said, "I'm just delighted. Thank you." And we had a nice little chat. And then off I went home, got home to Carolyn, who was saying, "Why were you called to the embassy? What's going on?" And so I still had it in the brown on Her Majesty's service envelope. And I sort of put that on the kitchen table and I said, "Inland Revenue." And we had a laugh.
What a shit.
No, so it was an incredible honour. Then on the day itself, which was the following March, it was at Windsor Castle. I didn't know who would be doing the investiture, and it turned out to be King Charles himself. So it was Her late Majesty's last New Year's honours that I got the honour, and it was King Charles's first investiture at Windsor Castle. So quite a bittersweet thing. And just one more story on that. You're allowed to take, I think it's 3 guests to the investiture. So it's fantastic. Obviously, got Carolyn and Chloe and Jack, my 2 grown-up children. And so that was great. So I was telling my mother about this and she said, "Oh, well, Carolyn will be very upset, if it's only 3 of us go." I said, "Actually." But so I called a friend of mine, said, "You should call the investiture office, St. James's Palace, and just tell them or ask them." And they gave me an extra ticket, so my mum came as well. So we had a wonderful day. Yeah,
it must have been such a huge honour.
So just talking about it now, do joke about it a little bit. I probably talk about it a bit too much, particularly on LinkedIn. But no, it's a great honour, and I love doing what I've done and what I continue to do.
Well, I think you're my 3rd or my 4th OBE in here, and no one's told the story quite so well. So it's good. It's good to know that that type of experience is just such a deep honour. And I can only imagine what it was like when you're at the embassy, and then just to get that envelope and open it up.
Oh yeah, and the wet signature.
It's what it is. It's recognition, and it's someone saying, I understand what you've done. I appreciate what you've done. You've made a difference. You matter.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And the other thing, you often see at award ceremonies and things, but actually it's very relevant here. Yes, I'd had a lot of years helping British businesses in particular come into market, that type of thing. But the whole experience with the business group, or the chamber as it is now, was such an amazing team effort, completely pro bono. People give up significant time. So it wasn't just me. I happened to be chair. But it really was it felt like accepting an award on behalf of the group as well. I even took my medal in for, show and tell. As you can imagine.
Did you wear it?
I've got it tattooed on my chest. So just in case I forget to,
everywhere I go, I just wear it like the local mayor.
It's part of me. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about business. Now, you set up a company called Links many years ago.
I did.
And I remember when I came here in 2005 that you were the guys that if you needed to set a company up or you needed to get a license in something, you were the guys to go and talk to. Nobody else really, at that time, do I remember having any engagement with. A couple of lawyers and whatnot that said they could do things. There was a company called Davison and Co. and whatnot in those days.
He was a lawyer later.
And Cynthia Trench and stuff like that.
That's right.
And they were around, but it was really, want to set a company up, you need a sponsor. That was the thing, go speak to John if you need a sponsor. John knows sponsors, he knows. And so you were that person, 20 years ago for me that did that. Now, obviously, there's been many companies that have set up since. So I want to talk about, first of all, why you decided to do that, what the opportunity was, and what were the challenges you faced 20 years ago in a Dubai that's incredibly different to how it is today.
Right, great. I mean, I think this is my sort of favourite part of the story, because when I arrived here in the late 90s, firstly, the reason I came here with my young family, so the kids were 8 and 6 at the time, so Carolyn and I sort of decided we were going to take this really significant opportunity at that time, and it was to open the first international office for a financial services business from the UK. Not a business I'd worked for before, but I'd been contacted in a previous role when I worked for Citibank Diners Club to say, would it be something you'd be interested in? We'd been to Dubai a couple of times on holiday, so we're quite early adopters in that way. I remember coming across some, because we did a bit of work with British Airways in the UK and got some reasonably priced tickets and came over and stayed at the Jebel Ali Hotel, that sort of stuff. Mid-90s. So I thought this could be really interesting. And sadly, both Carolyn's parents had died. The kids were still very young. Our kids were still very young. And so we thought life has to be better, really. Although we both, I had a good job in the UK and the kids were doing well at school, etc. So anyway, we came over here to establish that branch of a UK business. And it was exciting. As I was saying, joined the BBG, found people to help me, a lawyer, etc. And it was all elbows down at the ministry, and there was none of this sort of taking a delicatessen number and waiting your turn. It was, if you could attract the notary's attention, you could get to the front, and maybe a bit of shway shway, a tiny bit of Arabic would help, which I didn't speak, of course, but blustered my way through. And eventually established this business with a centrally banked license. As you'll remember, there was no financial free zone or anything like that, or any other free zone. It was Jebel Ali, basically, the port, or the vagaries of the economic department and central bank. Set up this business, built a team of about 20 qualified consultants. And I think our paths crossed a little bit where we worked together, offering solutions to the expatriate community, mainly. So it was a great ride, but only for 3 years. This business had a actuarial problem back in the UK and had to immediately shut down the sales function for this business. And it was a British institution established in 1763, same year as Barings, incidentally, but anyway, won't go there. I got that fated phone call one evening saying, John, thanks for everything you've done over there. Look after our people, close down the business, and thanks for everything, but make sure everyone's okay. And so it took a little while, but I needed to go straight back to the board and say, look, you need to remember where we are. We're here at the largesse of the amazing Emiratis, great leadership, good government, and all the rest of it. We're an investment company, in effect. We can't just close our doors and leave our clients behind. So a long story short, but I got permission from that organization to sell the business on if I could. And there was an incoming, again, British IFA, independent financial advisory business, who were based in Hong Kong, wanted to come into the market. And we did a deal where they took the business over for £1 in effect, but they were getting a client base, a local partner, sponsor, which I'll come back to you, on offices, licensing, great client book. So it's a plug and play for a business coming into market. And I thought, actually, that's quite cool. That whole transition was cool. And I stayed with the new business for a year, helping them with that transition or integration. And it was great thinking time. And Carolyn and I thought, do we really, at this stage, we've just got ourselves sorted out here. We were renting a nice villa down in Sakim, and the kids were settled in at school. Do we really want to go back to the rat race of the UK, or is there an opportunity here? And I often say to people now when I reflect that it takes sometimes a seismic thing to happen for you to plunge into entrepreneurship or to do something different. And that's what took me into that sort of entrepreneurial field. I thought, well, I could help other companies or individuals in the same boat as me coming into market to help them navigate and help them or connect them where necessary to help them establish their own business. So I started my business, Links Corporate Solutions, or as my daughter called it, Links Optical Illusions. She was only 10, bless her.
Very wise.
A very wise girl. So started Links, in effect, with a colleague of mine who'd come out of the other business, so a pure partnership. And the idea was to help businesses navigate the market, mainly UK businesses, because of our nexus. But then my local partner, very wise man, still a great friend, great family friend still to this day, he was actually the chief notary public at the time. At the courts, and he said to me, John, it's interesting what you're doing, because we're often at the notary, obviously, for obvious reason. It's interesting what you're doing, but what's the main barrier to entry for businesses coming into market? This was 2003. And I said, well, really, it's about this, 100% foreign ownership not being allowed. It's, businesses get a little bit nervous, because you'll recall, back in those days, you had to have a sponsor, as you called it, or a local partner that in effect held 51% of the foreign company's shares. And there were things called side agreements that said, oh, that's not really the case. But it was, in law, 51% or the majority of the business was owned by someone potentially you didn't know. Mm-hmm. So Mohammed said, and I and our lawyer friend, Jerry Parks of Taylor Wessing now, must give Jerry a shout out, came up with this concept, or pioneered this concept called the corporate nominee service, where a local company could be formed, or basically a corporate wrapper around an individual or two individual Emiratis, and later on Qataris and elsewhere in the Gulf, to create a corporate wrapper, and that corporate entity became the 51% shareholder for foreign companies, which afforded much more protection. So things like, that company couldn't change its mind. That company wouldn't die contractually, which could obviously happen with an individual. So the corporate nominee service was born 2003, 2004. And it was of great relief to foreign companies coming into market, knowing that they could protect themselves in that way. So I guess that's how the Links story came into being. And then we almost became the Links University, whereby we had lots of people coming in, working for us, learning the craft. And then perhaps because there was an opportunity, and quite rightly, starting their own businesses. Now there are many, many organizations that offer that service, although from a legislation perspective, it's now not always, or in fact, it's very rarely required to have a local partner in the same way as it was back in those days. So that was the Links story.
So you built this company and then you sold it and you went through a journey there. But what I want to do is try and extract some knowledge really, and try and give our audience some lessons from your journey. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about partnerships. Tell me what partnerships mean to you, what the upside and the downside are in your experience, not just with your own experience, but by watching other businesses.
Gosh, partnerships are what it's all about. So firstly, personally, the rock in my existence has been Carolyn, my wife. We were married 36 years this coming year. And, so that's a partnership in itself. She's put up with an awful lot. As you can imagine.
Yeah. I've known you a long time.
So partnership in its most fluid form, I suppose, is really important. But when I set up Links initially, for the first 4 to 5 years, that my initial business partner was with me for that journey. And then we got to a point where we both wanted different things. It had become almost enough, if you like, for a lifestyle business, but I had vision of a sort of future for the business, and my initial business partner didn't. So we came to an arrangement, and he was.
That was Nick.
Well, yeah, that's Nick. That's
Nick
right.
Hotboy. Okay,
that's right, Nick. It was great, and he, in those early stages of getting out there and selling the concept, to the lawyers that some of them you've mentioned, that were saying, "Yo, what are you doing, you whippersnappers in this market? This is lawyers' work." And then we eventually got the point across that actually it isn't. The legal work remains with you guys. We're offering that one piece, the local partner service, that you can't offer. And Nick was fabulous at that. But then we just got to the point, a juncture, where we wanted different things.
And that was respected, and that worked out
completely
decently.
Completely, yeah. I mean, we overpaid, obviously, but everyone was happy. And then my new partner, Julie Irving, who the market will know very well as well, came in and became this. Our partnership was very yin and yang, but became great friends, different strengths, and that's what grew the business exponentially over the next 10 years, and got it into shape by having non-exec directors on the board, that type of thing, governance within the business when we didn't have to have it, but we felt that was the right thing, and very much driven by Julie, that was the right thing to do for our eventual, whatever the exit strategy was going to be. So those two partnerships in the business have been absolutely key. But then you have the partners that people talk a lot about collaboration and partnerships, and often it's, what can you give me? What can you give me? But actually, true partnership and collaboration that we've had, for example, with the professional service industry over the years. So not just the lawyers, but the accountants, the investment bankers, potentially bankers generally. Working in partnership with them to offer mutual clients a solution on both sides has been absolutely key to everything I've done over the last 28 years. So that type of partnership. And then back to what we were just discussing, when you have an enforced partnership as far as ownership of your business is concerned, then I say, first due diligence, of course, but then embrace that partnership and actually don't just have it as something you have to do. And people used to say, it's like a tax, really, isn't it, paying that amount? No, we're here to engage with the local, the Emirati community, and so much value can be added by working collaboratively with them. That type of partnership, again, has been key to everything I've done here.
So a lot of people that are consuming this podcast might be in the United States or the UK, so it'd be alien to them to think that there was this local partner. But for me, I remember when we came here, our partner was Salah Al Halyam, and so that company was called PIC, if you remember in those days.
Yeah.
And I met Salah for the first time, and it's like this is your sponsor, this is your partner. And he was fantastic. He was really fantastic. He was pro the business. He was very supportive. Anything that I needed help or advice with, no hesitation to come and join me.
Wonderful.
It's a wonderful human being. And he helped me navigate some of the areas that were quite intimidating to me.
Yes.
Ministry of Labour was a place that I'd never been to before, but I needed to go to. Visas, renewals, all this kind of stuff. He was just there for me, and being introduced to local banks,
yes,
stuff like that, which he had a conduit too.
Yes,
so I really understood the benefit of that. I knew we had to have a partner number, a sponsor. There was no option that. No. But the fact that I lent in, spent time getting to know him, getting to know his family, and then by doing so, just like he was any other nationality,
yes,
we became friendly and more friendly as time went by, and
useful to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's an unusual type of thing to have, but that's what this country offered all those years ago.
Yes, exactly. But then that sort of sorry, cutting across you there, but that sort of evolves into general company formation and structuring advice. So it doesn't have to be someone owning equity in your business now. That doesn't exist. 100% foreign ownership is the norm here, other than very few.
Well, I think if and we have an insurance license, which means you've got to be on the mainland, and so there's places you can and can't.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this work that you've done. You've helped British businesses come across from the UK and establish themselves here.
And international.
Okay, so I want to focus on here, though, for the conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in this city that has grown exponentially since you arrived, since I arrived, in ways that I would never have imagined. I remember walking around the marina when it was. I tell you what, I remember arriving at the airport, and I had to go to Allane, not knowing what Allane was. And I landed at the airport, and I said to the taxi driver, Hilton Hotel Allane.
Yeah.
And he said, Allane? And I'm like, yeah, it says on the piece of paper there, Allane. He's like, Allane? I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so we got in the cab and we drove to Allane and got to the outskirts of Allane, and we didn't know where we were going. There was no sat nav back then, and the guy stopped a local, and the local said, follow me, and we followed the Nissan Patrol, and they eventually got us to this hotel. I went to bed, woke up the next morning, opened the curtains, and there were mountains. And I'm like, mountains? What the hell's going on here? I didn't know there were mountains in the desert, but there were mountains on the backdrop. But then we went from Allane, and you'll probably know who, Steve Rigby. So we went from Allane to Abu Dhabi, and I got to Abu Dhabi, and I had a look around this place. And then we drove from Abu Dhabi that afternoon to Dubai. And the sun was
over
melting.
the speed bumps.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but as we were coming towards Dubai, I could see in the distance these lights, and I said to Steve, "Is that Dubai up there?" He said, "No, that's Dubai Marina." And I was like, "What do you mean that's Dubai Marina?" I said, "Look at all the lights up there." He said, "Yeah, it's a marina project. They're building it at the moment." And so we got closer, and I'm like, wow. And I remember there was...
So that was 2005, did you?
When I moved here full time,
yes.
January 2005.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And so it was like, what? So this is just a marina? And he's like, yeah, it's just a marina project. And I went down and I looked at the prices of houses, and there were these townhouses that were 2.8 million dirhams. I'm like, who on earth is ever going to buy those?
All the way out there.
Yeah, and then obviously then the Palm, and I'm like, who's going to live there where we are right now?
Yeah, and then that's sunk.
Yeah, it's heavy. That's right. Yeah, and the fish have come back. But I look at this huge growth that this place has had, and lots of companies have moved here, and you've been instrumental in a lot of that. But were companies very hesitant to come into this market and didn't see it as really as big an opportunity as people like you and I living here would see?
Oh yeah, I think that's certainly true, but for a myriad of reasons. But of course, we've always enjoyed, through our time here, the connectivity of Emirates, for example. So travel here was simple, really, relatively.
Yeah, very.
Between here and the West and the Far East, very simple. But then I suppose it becomes that sort of, geographically, I think it was very interesting for some business to look at, okay, geographically, that's interesting. Connectivity-wise, that's interesting. They seem to be moving faster than the UAE I'm talking about, moving faster than the rest of the region as far as infrastructure is concerned. Schooling's pretty good for international. I'm talking way back in the day. It's fantastic now, but it was good then. So there were lots of compelling reasons to be here, but it was still called a hardship posting, which I find a little bit difficult to swallow, really. Although it was pretty expensive, wasn't it? Still, even back then, you had to rent your villa, and you had to pay a year up front. There was no multiple checks or multiple payments through the year or anything like that in those early days. But there were certainly businesses that were, when Mohammed asked me that first question, what's the barrier to entry for those companies that are interested, whether it be from the US, UK, or wherever, in coming here, what's the barrier? And it was this real nervousness about, do I really have to vest the ownership of my business in someone I don't know? You had an amazing experience with Salah, and there's we'll have some great Emirati friends who've done a terrific job. But I think to corporatize, if that's the word, that method made it simpler then for businesses to make the decision. Actually, we will try that there as an outpost for us between East and West. And well, the rest is history.
What mistakes did companies make along the way? What kind of things did they get wrong?
Do you know the thing that used to frustrate me, and still does to a certain extent, that sometimes businesses are highly regulated globally, generally, particularly businesses that are nomadic, as I'd call them, or in multi jurisdictions. But when businesses came here and their general manager or MD, whatever the position was, the person running the business, sometimes just left those standards at home. And I couldn't understand it. And then start thinking, well, it's all just price driven. We just negotiate hard, get the price down, whether it's for setting up my company, whether it's for the offices we're going into, whether it's even the staff. Or look, there are different nationalities. We can pay people different amounts and this sort of thing. So those sort of standards, unfortunately, for a while were left behind. But as regulations been brought in here, and the businesses that have done well and really thrived, like ours, frankly, were businesses that brought in self-regulation and governance from those early days. So, you don't just, it's not your brother that comes on the board so it looks nice to show you've got an independent director. It's someone who's independent and is not frightened to speak to the owners and shareholders about what they should be doing correctly. So I think regulation, a lot of people might not agree, but I'm in big favour of.
What's different today that stands out more than anything compared to 30 years ago?
Traffic for sure. Yeah, I give you that. It's just great. I love it. The busier it is on the roads, the busier we all are. So
what was different? What's different over the last 30 years that you don't like, apart from traffic stuff that you looked at and you're like, I wish it wasn't like this?
What we used to go. My father was from Jersey, Channel Islands. And,
my mother's from Guernsey.
Oh, I didn't know that. We could be related. Are you my cousin? Your long lost cousin. Yeah. We'll come back to that after. So why was I mentioning that? Yeah, from Jersey. And that's an island now that, relies heavily on not just financial services. I mean, it used to be cows and potatoes, but tourism always. But I remember, the Jersey people, probably Guernsey folk are the same. It's, these trippers are coming in again. The people that come in here, the tourists, they don't really understand how things work here. They don't, at a roundabout on the Channel Islands, you let the person on the right go before you. So everything moves well. So you sometimes get that aggressive behavior from people that are just coming in here for a short period of time. And so sometimes I must say it's probably just a grumpy old man syndrome, but I get a bit frustrated about sort of tourists coming in, and you sometimes read it, back in the newspapers back home in the UK of certain behaviors that have gone on. And you say, well, hang on, calm down, be respectful. And that's not so much from people living here now, although the population has grown massively and likely it should double by 2030, I think the plans are. But so I think a frustration for me is when people come in and don't respect. Yes, the local population or local community is less than 10%, way under 10% now. So we're visitors here in their country and at their largesse. So a little bit of respect goes a long way. But in the main, it's a great, vibrant, positive place to be. It is expensive, I have to say, Spencer, in every aspect. So one has to be doing quite well in whatever you're doing at whatever level to be able to subsist here. Yeah.
And when you look at business, how has it got better to do business over and set up and stuff? Is it just a whole different ballgame now? So much easier. It can be done online and very simply. If I want to set a business up in Dubai, I can do it very quickly now.
Yeah, it's much easier. And, with the e-government initiatives in particular, fabulous. And I've just recently set up a new license, which is the first time I've physically done it myself for a long time. It was all online, apart from 5 minutes right at the end when I nipped in to see that I wanted to go to the notary anyway because it was a bit nostalgic. But yeah, that was all online. And then you've got this plethora of advisors. I think you gave me a number earlier, didn't you, about how many company formation businesses?
3,400 company formation companies there are here in the UAE now.
Gosh, well, I'm very proud to be number one. Out of that flood. So again, but assistance is required. And so I joke about it, but there are certain structures where it can become, or shareholder structures that need to be, properly advised by the lawyers firstly, but in conjunction with someone that understands business structuring. And also making sure they're in the right jurisdiction, which sounds strange because we're one country, but there are many, I think 52 different jurisdictions or something across the UAE, which have slightly different nuances. So it's important to be pointed in the right direction to make sure, we always used to say back in the day, if the audience for your product or service is onshore, in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, or wherever, then you need to be a mainland company.
Mm-hmm.
If the audience for your product or service is outside the country or within the free zones, then a free zone company is probably good.
Mm-hmm.
There's that sort of, it's a bit of a grey area still, but to answer your question, it is much simpler now. But I think what's important for businesses coming into market is how they scale, how they build, how they prepare themselves for a future exit, if that is on the cards. And that's what interests me now. It's a sort of next generation advisory.
Okay. Have you seen examples of companies that have come here and failed?
Yes.
Give me an example. I want our audience to understand that it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yes.
People don't, we've got this boom economy. We've got everything going 100 miles an hour like crazy. And everyone just assumes, there's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow isn't very far away at all. Give me some not so nice stuff.
Well, look, I'll give you two of my own.
Okay.
That haven't worked out. Your business ideas rather than businesses coming in. So business ideas that haven't quite worked out when I thought I was being,
So you was going to set up an umbrella shop, were you?
Oh, damn. Yeah. Didn't work there. No. Yeah. Selling all that sand, and it just wasn't good enough. So one was 2007 with Julie, my business partner at Lynx. We thought, and this was an associated business to Lynx. It was called BID, B-I-D, Business in Dubai. So we had a nice brand, and the idea was to have a one-off event that would hopefully become an annual event for people coming in from all over the world to this particular event where they could meet, as I did through the BBD all those years ago, the bankers they want to deal with, the recruiters, and anyone associated with bringing a business here. So schools, pet shops, whatever it happened to be. And we had this amazing, at the Jumeirah Beach Hotel, their conference center, and we had this whole thing set up. It was quite an expensive thing to do because in that type of event world, there's a lot of sort of money up front, and the people that we brought in to display their wares, so to speak, are taking a bit of a risk. They want the numbers coming through the door. Then we had the global financial crisis just as we were about. So it was a bit of a damp squib, to be honest. But we navigated our way out of it. But that was a timing issue, and that could be anywhere in the world, couldn't it?
Yeah. So what specifically? That's an anywhere. But what specifically? Companies are coming here expecting it to be something that it wasn't, and ended up with egg on their face.
That's an interesting one, actually, because businesses do fail.
Yeah. Here is just as much as anywhere else.
High proportion, particularly startup.
Mm-hmm. Lots of startups have failed here.
Yes, yeah, lots have. Yeah,
lots.
But again, I think a lot of that's to do with perhaps, unfortunately, certainly back in the day, advisory. Where people have an idea and just think, everyone's an expert. You go to the local hostelry or whatever, and someone will tell you that, this is the way to do it because I've heard so and so's done it that way. That's not really the right way to approach a business setup. That's much better. That's back to your question of what's better these days, and there are plenty of advisors there. So I'm thinking out loud, really, to think about particular examples of. Because another business that I started was sort of online placement of non-executive directors. So like a Match.com sort of dating.
For Ned?
Yeah, for Neds.
Really?
Yeah. Which was
that didn't work.
Really cool. We were too early. We were just too early. I think it might still. Anyone can take the idea now. So, but yeah. So NXD Global. And we launched just before FT.com launched theirs. And I'm very proud to say we did make one placement, but it was into our own business.
He's pretty good. I'm going to have him. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of that? There was obviously you've got Bayut and Property Finder as these portals. There was another one set up by the brokers a couple of years ago as well.
Yes, it was. You're right.
They were advertising on the side of the building. What were they called? House.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
HOUZE or something.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah.
It was something like that.
I think it was House. Yeah,
and they failed.
Yeah, they did, which is interesting because you really want multiple choice.
Mm-hmm.
For that type of service. I think the likes of Property Finder and Bayut have done a terrific job.
hugely successful, and you've seen various IPOs that have taken place over the course of the last few years.
Yeah, exactly.
In industries we wouldn't have thought of, the Salic and you've got Talabat coming up as well. Yeah. The food delivery people, 10% of their equity be going out there for $1 billion.
Well, exactly. Just quite incredible. But just while you're speaking about them, it does make me think about perhaps an answer to you about businesses that have failed. Back to a point I was making earlier about I've seen businesses come in that have gone for the price option when entering the free zone or jurisdiction where they want to set up. So it's purely driven by price. That's 10,000 dirhams cheaper there, so that's why I'm going to do it. When it's been the completely wrong jurisdiction for them to sell their product or service. In fact, they might be hampered from selling their product or service if they had something great to deliver to government or quasi-government developers, for example. Sometimes you have to be a mainland business to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But they've gone cheapest route. Race to the bottom. So there've been a few of those failures, unfortunately. But in the main, back to your point, it's getting easier, Spencer.
Okay, next 5 or 10 years, what do we see happening in the market here? Do we just see this constant growth? Do we think it's going to, stagnate? I mean, everything seems to be led by a lot of new developments, meaning lots of properties coming onto the market, which means the population grows here. Obviously, we have low corporation tax and no income tax. Over the next 5 or 10 years, do you think income tax will come in? Do you think corporation tax will grow? Do you think this will be competitive like Singapore, but not outrageously competitive like it is right now?
I do, and I think it needs to be in some ways, which sounds a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas. But a VAT, for example, that was a really important thing for World Bank to see, and other global organisations to see that this is a serious jurisdiction for business. Now, you want to be competitive, of course you do. Which is like George Osborne back in the UK saying back in the day saying income tax should be 9% or corporation tax should be 9% or something. Yeah, of course you want it as low as possible, but that sustains the amazing infrastructure that we have. So I think sometimes people make the mistake here that it's all about property, or if they're building property, then that's the way the population growth is going to go, or the reason why for population growth. I disagree completely. It's more about the future vision. When you look at the 2030 or 2040 vision of leadership here, and a previous guest on this amazing podcast, Paul Griffiths, friend of ours, when he was talking about Dubai World Central, and that infrastructure that's being built is like building a country. He was very modest about it, saying it's like building a city within a city. It's like building a country, that infrastructure. So that requires people. Yeah, there's a lot of AI, a lot of technology, but it does mean people, and it means connectivity, and it means, I think Emirates say, is it within 4 hours you can reach a third of the world's population physically. Within 8 hours, 2/3 of the world's population. So that's already fantastic connectivity. Imagine what it's going to be like with 6 parallel runways, or whizzing through the airport in 3 minutes, or whatever. It's just going to be all the things we love. So I think I'm a great believer in that. I think the strategic vision is quite superb. And when you get a chance to sometimes see that from behind the scenes, I remember the original plan of 7 Palm Islands all the way along the coastline. You probably saw that as well.
Yeah.
And, it's great, His Highness's Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, his vision of saying, come on, let's do, 3 properly, or let's see how we go. But the vision to do that, to extend the coastline by however many kilometres. So tourism here, the non-dependence on hydrocarbon anymore, because it is nil dependent now. I honestly believe, even Abu Dhabi. I know Abu Dhabi's, people talk about it floating on oil, which that might be the case, but they're moving towards clean energy. So it's very exciting time in a world globally that doesn't feel that stable.
You have an OBE and you speak very well, which means you sound like you're posh, and you came from a posh upbringing, and you had a silver spoon in your mouth, and that was you as a kid. Was that your childhood?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I came from a childhood of great love, loving family with absolutely zero money, which in some ways I think has made me a little bit sort of materially focused, if I'm honest, in my own life. I wanted to get out of that. Both my parents came from, either on my mother's side, of naval background. So our father was a commander in the Royal Navy. His father was an admiral, and so on and so forth. My father, who was much older than my mother, 21 years older, was twice commissioned in the British Army, and came from a sort of quite a long line of military. They were good families.
But did you grow up in the Channel Islands?
No.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a little village, or outside a little village, in a rented farm cottage, a village called Warnham in Sussex, West Sussex.
So that's where you grew up, West Sussex?
Yes, yeah.
So is that
cold, freezing farm cottage, no central heating, no double glazing or anything like that. But a very proud family. My father always dressed for dinner. I never saw my dad without a cravat on.
Really? A cravat?
Yeah. If he wasn't in a suit and tie going to work, he was in a cravat for dinner or for supper. And my mum was, she had her coming out in the 50s, not in the way we think of it now. So I had so much, the debutante world and all that. So they both came from, but for whatever reason, money disappeared. And by the time they had their, really happy union, my mum 21, my dad 42 when they married, and 3 kids. I've got an older sister and a younger brother, much younger brother, and it was tough, to be honest. It really was tough. And I left home at 15 and a half, I should say, and I sort of made my mother was very keen for me to join the Royal Navy. I can't swim, so it wasn't going to work.
That means you.
My father, I think, wanted something military. I was no good at school. I wasn't very good at school. We had a very posh name. So, I was often called Valery and bullied and all that sort of stuff. But I think that gives you a little bit of I was okay with that. But at 15 and a half, I remember I bunked off school. I shouldn't probably say it. And went up to London with a friend of mine. We were walking up Victoria Street, where New Scotland Yard is.
Yeah.
And there was a big poster on the outside, one of those sort of Kitchener-style posters saying, "Your city needs you, Metropolitan Police Cadets." I thought, that sounds cool. That'd be really cool, actually. So I applied to become a cadet without telling my parents. And a number of weeks later, a letter came through saying you've been accepted to go for an interview at a medical and stuff. So I went back up to London, went to this medical, which is my other little funny story, stupid story. Went to this medical. So I'm 15 years old, not knowing really what was going to go on. In this robe, go into the doctor's office, take your robe off, stand on this mat that's got big white footprints on it. And I stood on the white footprints and my feet were much smaller than the big white footprint. I thought, I failed already. My feet aren't big enough. So anyway, but I didn't. So joined the cadets. I was with them for 18 months, Met Police Cadets. And at that time you were able to retake your GCSEs or CSEs from school time. So I managed to slightly improve my academic record, not brilliantly, but I loved the little bits of police craft we were doing, and I sort of sent out to a police station in South London, sort of made the tea and stuff like that, and just looking around. Thought this would be really cool. So I worked very hard to get into Hendon, the main police college, and eventually became a police constable.
What would being a policeman, or what does being a policeman teach someone about business?
Well, I suppose interviewing techniques.
Yeah, okay.
But the interrogative style, yeah. I think just as a youngster, when you went through that process, and I'm still in contact with some friends from, back in those days, some that did their full 40 years or whatever it was in the police, 40 years. I think you learn a lot about life. That's the first thing, and how to deal with people from all backgrounds. So whether it's specifically business, I'm not sure what the business lessons were. Life lessons.
You learn to handle complaints.
Yes.
You learn to handle angry people.
Yes.
You learn to handle people that are frustrated. So great customer service learning experience there.
Yep.
Placating people. Yeah. You probably learn not to take any shit from people that
where possible, yeah.
Because in business, they're not lessons that
no, I suppose they're life lessons, aren't they, rather than specifically business lessons?
But again, applicable to so much in business, because we're not taught, to deal with an irate person, or we're not taught to give that person a look back saying, you're not wearing the trousers right now, sunshine, I am, type of thing.
Yeah.
Like you would in a boardroom when someone...
Yes, true. Yeah, to actually enough's enough, or stick to your guns as far as back to the governance piece is concerned. No, it's very true.
You learn to negotiate in the police force. I'm sure there's some negotiation taking place. Interesting. I look back at people that I've employed over the years, and when I look at people that I employed in sales that came from the military, there were two types. There were officers and there were ex-soldiers.
Yes.
And so if you employed a soldier, he would do exactly what you tell him to do.
Task driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
he would do what you told him to do, but he didn't necessarily know why he was doing it, because he would just do what he was told to do. The officers, when you employed the officers, they would have the same level of discipline, but they would ask why. And their level of curiosity was much higher. So taking on ex-officers, bringing into a sales environment, they because they felt they had permission to ask why.
Yes.
Not to be obstropolous or anything, but because they wanted to understand, why it makes sense to do so.
That makes absolute sense to me, and also the sort of managerial skills that you do.
Yeah, they have the ability to hold court and lead and understand that. They're my experience. Do you ever think you've made it? Do you look at yourself? Do you know you sold a business, you made some money? Okay, you've had some failures along the way. You've got an OBE, for goodness sake. Well, have you ever sat down and said and had a moment where you've gone, not bad?
Do you know, in all honesty, not yet.
Honestly, come on, John.
No, there's been moments in my life, and anyone that knows me, my main focus and my love and my desires is all about my family. So I'm lucky still to have my mother alive, but Carolyn, the kids, 4 grandkids, they're sort of everything to me. So to me, that's a major achievement, actually. Yeah, well done, John, but well done them for putting up with John. And there have been stages along the way. The business here to start with was tough. It really was tough. I remember Carolyn going to the school asking, can we possibly delay school fees? Because, it wasn't like in the UK where the kids just trot off to school and that's it. We had tough financial times in the early years of our business. So I suppose when business did start to take off, when Julie actually, became a partner, and we to change the focus and perhaps effort. In fact, talk about effort, so I'm going off tangent a bit, but I always like this. Julie was actually a client of ours before she became my business partner, and she did a sort of strategic direction for businesses to help them get on the right track. And she did a day with Nick and I, and she said, look, I've got a great idea of how you can immediately double your revenues. I thought, crikey, this sounds really interesting. How's that, Julie? She said, work in the afternoons. So I learned a bit there. So sorry, I was going off there. But so when the business started, when we could start to afford things properly, that was it's not one moment in time, but it was just thank goodness for that moment. When we sold the business, it was amazing. The OBE is still up there as a great moment, but I think there's more to come. I love a challenge.
I was with a guy the other day who was 67, and he said, I still think like a 25-year-old. He said, and he goes, and the obvious thing is I think like a 25-year-old when I see a good-looking woman. He said, but the reality is I still think like a 25-year-old in business, as in I'm wise, but I still have the same energy when I see opportunities. I get excited about opportunities. So he goes, obviously I can see much more of what the negative of the opportunity is now with my wisdom and years of experience, but nonetheless, I still get very excited. Do you?
Yeah, no, and I think that's really nice, and a nice way for him to have, or her him to have explained that, because I think I do still get excited about it, but and I've always thought when I was younger, I wanted some of that sort of grey hair on the board. You want a bit of that wisdom, but with energy as well. And I tried to choose people like that and managed to do that quite well. Now it's the other way around. I love this whole thing, that could be labeled as reverse mentoring. We're bringing, the younger, sort of more techie focused, even Gen Z, whatever people say about them, whoever they are. There's a real benefit to having that the younger generation reminding the older generation that have still got energy or gas in the tank, that again, through collaboration and different ideas, we can really do some cool stuff. So I'm absolutely with him on that. I can't believe I'm 60, but I am.
Tell me what you're working on at the moment. What exciting stuff are you working on? What you want to announce something?
Oh, not necessarily announce, but I've sort of this summer, because I was 60, I turned 60 in September, and this summer I sat down somewhere and I realised that people kept asking me, as to be fair, you did a while ago. Are you doing much these days? Almost have you retired, or what's going on? And I'd be saying to people, oh no, there's still more gas in the tank, which seems to be my usual thing. So because I've been involved in a couple of really interesting projects to help businesses scale fast by introducing to government, private sector, whatever. So I've been doing that for a while, but then it was actually a chat with my son, but also a great friend of mine who's sort of collaborating with me on this new idea to disrupt an existing business. And what it is, Spencer, I've been involved for years, as you know, in the foreign investment world, FDI world, helping businesses significantly invest in this country. And over the years, those individuals that are pulling the strings, making the decisions, have often said to me, we're thinking about maybe property investment here for themselves, for their family, or as part of their overall investment strategy. And I've always batted that away to people that I thought, or referred it, I should say, to people that I felt would deal with them in a professional and great way, and they always have. But I've now decided to actually capture some of that myself. And I'm establishing a property investment office. It does have a brokerage attached to it, but it's not another Dubai real estate brokerage. It's for off-market opportunities, and we'd call them, for more sophisticated investors, because as you'll know better than I probably, but institutional investors, pension funds, etc., that are looking at the property market here much more seriously because of the better regulation, etc., that's coming in. So it's not looking necessarily for your fast buck, but for a steady investment proposition as part of an overall investment portfolio. And that's what we'll do. And I've decided to do that quite boldly, I think, under my own brand. So it's MSV Estates is the business that will be probably launched by the time hopefully this podcast comes out. Mm-hmm. And I'm really looking forward to that. I've got a private banker friend that's coming in to join me, and another real estate.
So that's a new startup, new business,
brand new
60-year-old man.
Yeah.
You're like, what's the Colonel from KFC, aren't you? He started KFC at 62.
Did he? Yeah. Oh, great.
KFC was started at 62. Colonel, what's his name?
Sanders.
Yeah, Colonel Sanders.
So MSV Estates, finger licking good. Yeah.
Okay, let's give people some tips and advice. Okay, if you want to come here and set your business up, you want to move it from the States, from the UK, you want to get it established. What are the three things? Let's give people 3 tips, 3 things they need to be aware of, okay, and make sure they do the due diligence around.
Yeah, well, that last point is the key piece, the due diligence. And as I say, you come into market potentially and meet people, and everyone's an expert. Now, as a professional advisor, if I dare call myself that, in whatever field, of course I'd say that in some ways, but make sure you select the right advisor and don't just be price driven in this market, because it is in every single field here. It's becoming, unfortunately, a race to the bottom on price, and that's not necessarily right for you. It actually, after advice, might be the more cost effective option, but don't just race into that. Something I touched upon earlier, or mentioned earlier, I think, about leaving your standards at home. Why would you? And it's a bit of a respect to our hosts here to, so behave in the right way, but also from a business perspective, do things in the right way, because it's actually quite fun when it works out, and those things are aligned. And the third thing sounds a bit sort of trite, but from just a personal delivery perspective, a little bit of humility goes a long way. We don't always get it right, and I think sometimes it's good to say, hands up, that wasn't absolutely right, and learn from those. We touched upon a couple of them along this journey, but mistakes will be made, but if they're genuine mistakes, rather than careless mistakes, I think they can be forgiven.
And tell me, how important is it to build relationships with Emiratis in their home country?
Well, firstly, it's polite, isn't it? We're the guests. But secondly, it's incredibly important. The skill of the Emiratis, the education, the vision, the kindness. Nothing but respect for these. When you look at the wider region, we have geopolitical issues, don't we? But I'm really, really proud and pleased that I'm here with my extended family now, here in the UAE. The Emiratis are truly incredible people. And I've had, I suppose, I've been very lucky that I've, in some cases, actually represented them in certain transactions through trust. And that trust is repaid, 1,000-fold.
One thing I would always advise people to do is to understand that business isn't done in the same way in every country in the world. So don't think you're just going to bring in your rules and your ways of doing business and plant them into another country. I've lived in 10 countries. In Brazil, it was different. In Thailand, it was different. And in the UAE, it's different.
It is. Yeah.
So learn what's different and understand you have to adapt to their ways if you want to progress. Otherwise, you'll be a bull in a china shop thinking, well, why is it not like this?
Yes.
If I did it in the UK, it would take 5 minutes to do this. It takes 10 minutes.
And you hear some of that, and it's nonsense. And it's like the whole Emiratization or localization drive is so important because the talent is incredible coming through the language.
But there's a problem with that.
Tell me.
There aren't enough Emiratis.
Well, true. I suppose, yeah.
They just start, if you actually calculate, because we know 10% of the population is local, then remove from that, okay, the kids. Okay, so they're out of the equation for now. Okay, and let's start with 18-year-olds and upwards that are just going into university and stuff. Probably a good age group to start grabbing hold of that talent. When you add those numbers up and you consider how many companies are being established here and growing here all the time, and how some of them are growing exponentially, how are we ever going to be able to find enough Emiratis for those roles?
Well, you've answered it. There's going to become a stage when you can't. So the golden nugget is to make sure you actually do while you can. But while it is possible, don't be silly about this. Engage with, our local hosts. There's a lot to offer and a lot of benefit to come from that. But you're right. As that population, doubles even, there are going to be challenges. But it has to be done.
Yeah. Well, I look at the police force, and the police force, they're Arab speakers, but many aren't Emirati.
No, they're not.
They're from many different countries in the world.
But the leadership is Emirati within the police force.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And I find it interesting how people have opinions on this. And I keep reminding people, this is not your country.
No, exactly.
Okay, you are a guest in somebody else's country, and they are giving you the opportunity to live a very nice life, should you choose.
Yes.
So,
no, you're right, Spencer. And
just respect it.
Yeah, it is. It's just remembering that sometimes. Without being over the top about it. But again, it's back to respect and a bit of humility. We are guests here, whether you got a golden visa or not. We're guests here. We're not citizens.
Lastly, before I finish, you've been on 1 or 2 podcasts before, but you're now here on this one today. And you said you were a little bit nervous before you started. Have you enjoyed the experience?
Well, the thing that drove me to it, Spencer, obviously, other than you being the host, was it's about my favorite subject. Myself.
On me?
I knew it. No, it's been great, thank you. And in some ways quite cathartic. Because I meant it earlier when you mentioned the OBE thing, not to bring it up again, of course,
just in case anyone forgot.
OBE, that's Officer of the Order.
Yes, we're going to set you up with the microphones like this.
No, I can. So I might as well just embrace it. But honestly, it did make me. I remembered that moment, and thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, but I think for anyone that is listening and thinking of doing business here, don't just think about it, do it.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much for coming to join us on the show today.
Thanks, Spencer. Enjoyed it. Cheers.